So today we have a private tour of the highlights of the Museum of the Jewish People at Beit Hatfutsot. And we're going to see the museum's new and spectacular core exhibition with museum educator Libat Weiss. And Libat is going to tell us about the museum, past, present, and future. And personally, I visited many years ago, and I'm very excited to see what's new. So just to give you an idea, the Museum of the Jewish People at Beit Hatfutsot is more than a museum. It's a unique global institution that tells the ongoing and extraordinary story of the Jewish people. The museum connects Jewish people to their roots and strengthens their personal and collective Jewish identity. The museum opened in 1978 thanks to the vision of Nahum Goldman, president of the World Jewish Congress. In 2005, the Israeli Knesset passed the Beit Hatfutsot law that defines it as the national center for Jewish communities in Israel and around the world. The museum strives to make us part of the story, a story of constant renewal. After a multi-year of rebuilding the museum, it's embracing a renewal process that reflects the Jewish world of today. It celebrates the multiculturalism of Jewish diversity and adopts an inclusive, pluralistic approach. And now I give you Libat.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Connie, for having me with you today. And as you mentioned, we do celebrate the renewal of the museum, established over 40 years ago. It used to be named Beit Hatfutsot up till very recently, up till 3 months ago. And we're still getting used to it. So the staff, the educators, the veteran staff that we have still sometimes say Beit Hatfutsot because it's in our DNA, you may say. But the new name you can see above my head in here, in the Zoom window that we have, Anu, Anachnu, we, us. We want to tell this story and share this story from different communities, from different timelines or backgrounds, but still celebrate being part of the bigger picture of the Jewish world, of the Jewish people. So with that having said, we would now jump straight to some bits and kind of flavors of the new galleries. We have over 500 different objects. We have 4 amazing floors. So we'll see some of it. We'll share videos, and it wouldn't be just a YouTube, that you press YouTube and you don't need me for this. We'll stop. We'll have time for a bit of sharing and questions and interactive conversation between us, and then we will go on. So without further ado, I give you the very new museum, Anu, the Museum of the Jewish People. Welcome. Here we go.
It's so wonderful to be with you all on such a special day. Over a decade in the making, the moment has finally arrived. We are proud and honored to introduce the Museum of the Jewish People. A new museum deserves a new name. The Hebrew word Anu means we, us, and it embodies everything the new museum stands for, a place where everyone feels they belong. So before we take a tour of the museum itself, here, for the first time, is our brand new name and logo. Anu, Museum of the Jewish People.
So what we see in here is actually the campus of Tel Aviv University. That's the actual yard with many students in it. And if you would go by foot 10 minutes in that direction and you would go straight out, you would get to the port, to the Tel Aviv port, to the Mediterranean shore. So that's just the fact that it's nice to know. And our building, part of the Tel Aviv University campus, is a very massive building of over 4 floors and a basement. And each floor stands for a subject, for a theme, for a narrative. So we would go from the 3rd floor down to the 2nd, then to the 1st floor in our highlights tour today of the new galleries. So let me take you in the see-through elevators that we have. That's actually a see-through elevator that many people like to kind of like take pictures of, see the viewpoint of Tel Aviv, the white city in Israel, the palm trees, as we approach the 3rd and highest floor of the museum. And in that floor, we would celebrate being part of a mosaic. You, me, Connie, Kathy, and others that tells our personal story. so one can have the same tour with different memories. It's interactive, so wherever you come and travel and visit the museum on your own, it's kind of like a lot of touch screens, holograms, different videos, a different database that you can look for your own story, your own family roots. And the first room in the gallery tells us a story about the mosaic of the Jewish people, different family logos, different portraits, not only the traditional one, but also a new, more pluralistic one of different members of the family, of different backgrounds, as one can say. While it's very obvious, maybe it's very obvious to you guys, in Israel in 2021, it's not so obvious for a national official museum to celebrate diversity, to celebrate different families with different backgrounds. So just let me hold it in here so you would understand what I'm talking about. So maybe, again, maybe at your end it's not such a big deal. It would be kind of like, yeah, obvious. But in Israel it's not obvious to have in the same corner of a museum, from your left-hand side, this, I would imagine, more of a secular couple with tattoos and their dog, a Hasidic person, a family with different backgrounds, with Ethiopian Jewish backgrounds, and a family of Abba and Abba, Daddy and Dad, which is also something you wouldn't see in other Jewish identity museum, not because it's not here, it's here and we celebrate it, but because it wouldn't have a place, an equality, and we celebrate diversity of different backgrounds. That's part of what we do as educators. And the first short curating film I want to share, in this video we will see an amulet of an European Italian background, and we believe sometimes you need one object, you need one example to know of a bigger story. So that's what you're going to see here. Let's have a look.
This magnificent amulet is on loan to our museum from a private collection in Casale Monferrato, Italy. It has an outstanding story. It was gifted to Elda Wallenberg Corinaldi on her wedding day on April 1925. During the fascist regime and the Second World War, the Corinaldi family had to flee their house not before concealing all their valuables in a double wall in their house, which was later seized by the Italian military. 2 years after the war ended, the family returned to their house to find all their valuables awaiting them, including this amulet. This is a typical Italian amulet, also known as a shaddai. It has beautiful ornaments on it and also an amulet for protection inside of it. We're very happy we'll have this on our exhibition.
So as you saw, it was only one example of different backgrounds and heritage that we have in the museum, double ceiling, more darker days, and where we are today. And in this Judaica gallery, I would like to pause for a second. And if you can see from the left-hand side down on your screen, you'll see those amazing silverware of Shabbat candles from one hand side. And all the way to the back, you would see a white little cup, venetala, to wash the hands. How come in such an amazing museum we have both side by side? I mean, even money-wise, it's not on the same even scale of how much it's worth. The Shabbat candle holders are very precious, and the venetala is just plastic cup that you can buy in 5 shekels in the shuk, in the market in Tel Aviv, right? So how come we chose this plastic cup to be part of the exhibition? Jewish identity is part of who you are on a daily basis. Regardless of what you choose to celebrate or not celebrate, to believe or not to believe in your daily life, it's part of a whole identity. So we want to celebrate different aspects of it. And I think you would like the next item we chose to show in our highlights tour, which is the Kiddush to go. So just imagine Kiddush to go cup, like Starbucks coffee, like Aroma coffee in Israel, just a paper bag that you would take the coffee to the parking lot while rushing to your errands. And the Kiddush to go is of a New York artist, and it comes to show you that being Jewish, being with the identity, is on a daily basis. It's not only on Shabbos night. It's something that you take and carry throughout, and maybe each one of us would have a different pronunciation to it. So Kiddush to go as an example to modern Jewish life cycle. So that's another thing that we have on the same gallery. And in here we celebrate Jewish leadership and pioneers from music such as the guitar of Leonard Cohen, that wrote Hineni and wrote different Hebrew lyrics of the Old Torah sang in his last album. And of course, the color, maybe today, more so than other days, the color of RBG of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Of course, the judge of the Supreme Court for many, many years. We were very lucky that she had given the museum and dedicate her book to the museum and gave one of the colors. Of course, little did we know she had given this to us with the dedication, and we invite her to the opening events of the museum. We didn't know it's going to be COVID-19 year. And B, no one had any idea. She sadly had passed away 6 months after dedicated the book to us. So we do have a corner, and I know you guys probably know a lot about her, just being an American Jewish Jewry. In Israel, not many people, not the younger generation, for instance, don't know a lot about her. And we make sure in all our high school stores to stop and explain, and they have little interactive missions to learn about not only David Ben-Gurion and Herzl, but of Ruth Bader Ginsburg as well, as a value of what we want to do as educators in the museum. We would go down to the second floor now. So from mosaic and personal identity to a community identity. I'm part of a group. I'm part of the journey. And the second floor is the journey of the Jewish people. From Abraham and our father Abraham Avinu to our current days. Sometimes in very good conditions, sometimes in dark days, in every continent, in every language. So we have an amazing map, a global worldwide map. And people usually, as educators, we always say, where's the traffic jam? You know, where everybody stands in the museum when we have loads and loads of people. And we always have traffic jam next to this map, next to this interactive world map, because people are really eager to see the entire video and the entire journey of the Jewish people from Egypt to different regions of the world, from the Inquisition in Spain to, of course, Latin America, North America, etc., many, many stories. And I would like to pause just for a second now and ask you guys, we're not a lot of people, but let's have a quick kind of like a rendezvous between us to see where were your great-grandpa born? Meaning not our days, so you would say USA, which is obvious, but where did your great-grandma or grandpa came from? So Roxanne, if we can hear you, you can write in the chat. Let's have a go. Go ahead, I can hear you.
Oh, is that me?
Yeah.
Is that me?
What's your name,
Well,
sir? I'm not
the
sure.
way I answer, probably Poland.
Mm-hmm.
But the way if anyone asks me today, where were my ancestors from? I say the Middle East.
So Poland, and then before some centuries.
Poland, I view Poland as a way station in terms of my ancestry.
Thank you so much for that. And Phyllis, what would you say? Unmute yourself, dear Phyllis. Press on the little, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly, yes.
Okay, my father's side of the family came from, before he came here in the early 1900s, he was from Vienna, but actually we think that our background was Polish before that. Because, you know, years ago in Europe, every Montek and Donnerstag, they changed the name of the country.
Yeah,
and my mother came from Romania.
Galicia and Russia. Many Jews, Galicia and Russia, were kind of like on the borderline between states, between countries. So
I don't think it was Russia. We think we never thought to ask our dad before he left, but it was sort of Poland. But in the end, it was Vienna. And my mother came from Romania, from Bucharest.
Thank you for sharing. What about,
Thank you.
I'm not sure of the names of all of you guys. I'm just going to use your Zoom names. So, Pinkreger, the nice lady, I'm not sure, but we can't hear you. Write on the chat. Write on the chat the country, because we can't hear you. And what about Kathy Sachs?
Poland and Russia.
Poland and Russia as a background. What about Helen Pilowicz?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
On my mother's side, my grandmother, I don't know where she came from, but I know my grandfather on my mother's side came from Russia. I'm sorry, incorrect. German.
Mm-hmm.
He came from Germany. That's as far back. On my other side, my father's side, they all came from Poland.
From Poland. So we have so far Poland and Vienna, Austria, and Russia, and did we have Romania in here? No.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Romania.
I thought that's what we had. And one more person who's trying to connect us. But see, we're not so many people, and it's not so clear. And let me tell you, in other groups, we have from Uzbekistan to Iran, Persian, Iran of our time, to Yemen, to you name it, all over the world. Just comes to a sense of the bigger picture of the Jewish nation, and where are we? Where is my family coming from to that story? And with that in mind, we'll continue and see what else do we have. Talking about a journey, let's see a journey of that artifact, sharing with you now.
This Esther scroll is from the beginning of the 16th century. The analysis of the parch and the Hebrew letters revealed that it was probably done by a person who fled Spain to northern France and settled in an Ashkenazi Jewish community. From France, it traveled to Fez, Morocco, to join its renowned Sephardi community. This scroll arrived in Israel in the 1960s and was donated to our collection lately. From Spain to northern France to Morocco to Israel, this Esther scroll traveled in the footsteps of Sephardi Jews.
We saw just as another example the journey of the Esther scroll from France through Spain to Israel of our times. And in the museum, you would see different locations, different galleries talking about the origins of different communities and the special stories and leaderships that they had, from Babylon to Jerusalem of first temple, second temple, and to our times. And if we're talking about our times, this very little candle, it's of the size of the palm of my hands. It's very simple. It's made out of copper. It's pretty simple, but the story behind it is amazing. It's actually an oil lamp, an oil candle, if you can see with the little spring that it has. So you put oil and you light it, and that used to be a Shabbat candle. Some of the people in the community I'm about to tell you about had only one, and some of them had two. But the tradition was Shabbat candles, lighting the candles on Friday night. The community is of Belmonte, Portugal, in the mountains, in the high mountains of Portugal, very remote place, very isolated village of Belmonte. They were sure, 100% sure, that they're the only Jews left in our planet. That's it. So they said, okay, whoever visits the village, whoever, when we talk to others, don't say kosher or mikveh or Shabbos. Don't say those words. And if you keep the tradition, keep it in hide, like in the Inquisition, like in bad times of Jews in hide, Jews under difficult circumstances. They had no idea until next to the 70s, 1970s. I'm not wrong. 1970s. When I first heard it from our curator, chief curator, I said, "It's an urban legend. It couldn't possibly be true. It's just a legend." No, it is true. It is so. We had New York Times, we had planes, we had flights, we had newspapers, and still they were very, very isolated. So Belmonte, Portugal was sure that they're the only one, so much so that if you watch in a second, in the black and white picture, they kept secret and they lit the candle either under a desk, either inside a cupboard, inside a cupboard, a closed cupboard, or either in the basement to hide. And they had no idea, so it's not so obvious that we speak freely and we speak Hebrew in Israel and we celebrate the different holidays, and as American Jews you can be safe in your identity, while in other places in the world maybe it's not the case. It's not the same conditions to be freely believe in public in whatever you choose to believe. And now we go and see the different immigrations, the different choices that Jews throughout times have made, from the Jews of Europe of older days, such as your grandparents of Galicia, of Ukraine, of Russia, through Jewish people of the big migration from Europe to the States, from Europe to North America, really, from little shtetls, the villages, to the bigger cities, and of course the big migration of almost 2 million Jews from all around Europe, mostly Russia and East Europe, but not only, to Ellis Island, New York, and from 1880 to 1924. And keep in mind, some of those Jews had boarded a ship. They thought they would go to America, the Golden Medina. Some of them had led to Ecuador, to Buenos Aires, to Montreal, Canada, to different locations in the New World, as they used to call it. Our times, I'm not so sure that would be the names that we would choose, culture-wise. But back then, that's what they knew, from Europe to somewhere that they have never been to. And with that in mind, we're going to hear one more story of a special object, one of my favorites personally. And when we hear the story of this object, think about your family. Think if you have a special item, a chanukia, a necklace, a picture, a letter, even in the room you sit at now. If you look around you, do you have something of family memories, of a Jewish memory that you want to share with us later on? So with that in mind, here's the video.
This Hebrew typewriter belonged to the great Yiddish author, the Nobel Prize for Literature laureate, Isaac Bashevis Singer. Bashevis Singer immigrated to America from Poland shortly before World War II. His wife and baby son were left behind. They later immigrated to Israel. Years later, Bashevis Singer renewed his relationship with his son and often came to visit him in Israel, and during the 1970s, even stayed here for a few months. And this is his typewriter on which he was writing his books during his many visits in Israel. He left it to his son, who left it to his daughter, who donated it to our collection to be displayed in an exhibition about modern Jewish literature.
So, if you're talking about special items, special family history and stories behind objects we all have around us, I challenge you, don't be embarrassed. It's an opportunity to share more of a personal note, personal stories. Look around you in the room. Do you have a necklace or earring or a ring or a letter or a family picture? If you don't have it around you, you can get up and go bring it. And if it's too further apart, we'll imagine. Tell us the story, we'll imagine you have the item. So, like the typewriting machine, in the new generation, I have to explain, even 20 and above, 20 years old people, I have to explain that we didn't have those machines with us at all times. But the typewriter machine as a way to a writer to actually type the stories. Bashevis Dinger was a Nobel Prize winner, an editor, a writer. Such a personality influenced many writers after him. And now it's your turn. What items do you have? Kathy, I see you have something in your hand. So unmute yourself and we're with you, Kathy.
4 years ago, I went on a women's mission to Israel. It's my first and only time so far. And we worshiped with Anat Hoffman and Women of the Wall at the wall. And we all got a little.
What was your experience in the wall, in your delegation, when you were there? What was your personal experience?
So the things that struck me were that the wall that divides the men and the women, men were standing on chairs and looking over at the women. And on the women's side, there were women that were older, but also teenagers standing around us as we read from the Torah, screaming to drown us out. And I couldn't understand why a woman wouldn't want the opportunity to read from the Torah, because it's such an honor, but they thought it was a shanda.
So Kathy, unfortunately, we have it, and it's not rare what you've experienced. And I had a privilege to be part of delegation such as this as a tour guide, not as part of the delegation of worship, but as a tour guide. And hopefully we would have peaceful and more respecting days in Israel to worship in whatever way you want, but we still have a road to take. Thank you so much for sharing, Kathy.
You're welcome.
It's of value. Who's next? Phyllis, do you have something?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Or a story? Okay,
No.
so think about it. I don't know the nice lady name with the printer. Susan, but unmute yourself, Susan. We had a problem earlier with the sound of Susan.
I know.
Oh, now we can hear you.
But you can't see me.
Okay, so tell us and then show us.
Can you see me though?
No, but we can hear you. So let's go for sound.
But okay, so I was going to show you a.
Oh, so show us and then go to sound. Let's do this. So we see a family picture of black and white, or maybe it's not family, maybe it's just people gathering, quite a few of them.
It is a family, it's a family picture of my aunt and uncle getting married. It's from 1948. And the older little girl in the picture is me.
Wow.
And I love this picture because it reminds me of all the wonderful photographs you see like at Yad Vashem of families just being together. And it was taken in New York City. They got married in New York because, and it was a very small apartment wedding because it was right after the war and things were, no one was having fancy weddings. And it's, I love it because it's all my aunts and uncles. Most of the people in this picture have died. Just my sister and I and one woman.
Show us the picture. So your sister and you is the little girls.
We're
up,
the little
more
girls.
up. You're the little girl.
Right.
Can you hold it a bit higher? Yeah, that's perfect. So the little girl is you and your sister.
Yeah. And there's one woman, let's see, where is she? She's here. She's also alive still. She's in her late 90s.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. But everybody else is gone, and I just love this picture. So it's
what do you remember, or what you have been told of the picture?
I remember going.
America?
I remember what was the question? I'm sorry.
Where is it from in the world? Is it in Europe? Is it in
No, it's from the States. It was in Manhattan. And I remember driving there from Brooklyn, and my mom did not want us to be wearing our organdy hand-painted pinafores all the way down because then it would be crushed. So we had to stop. It must have been like a Sunday morning because stores were all closed, and we stopped on a street that had like narrow entryways into a store with windows on either side. It's like a typical old kind of shop. And we were changed into these party dresses there which I found kind of mortifying because, I mean, there was no one looking at us, but, you know, there could have been. So there was that.
Different days.
And I remember,
Different days.
I remember that they wanted me to be holding her train, my aunt's train, as she walked down this little walkway. And I was too embarrassed. I was scared. I was scared to do it. So,
Wow, amazing that you still remember for such young age.
right. I was like 5, just barely 5, 4.5.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Anyone else? Helen, did you? Yeah, Helen, go ahead.
Yes, I have this spice box. Can you
Can you close it closer to the camera? It's a spice. Is it spice for Havdalah or?
Yeah, but I
Yes.
want,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
my grandmother brought it from Poland. It has the little door here for,
Oh, we have something similar in the museum, you know?
and
We
brought
have
it.
something similar in the museum.
Poland. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I
That's
interrupted.
okay. Go ahead, Helen.
So and then I guess it was handed down to my father and his family, and now my children used it during the Havdalah service.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I just wanted to share that we have something similar in the museum, and it's of this style considered to be one of the oldest Judaica ornaments that you can get. So keep it close in your family. Maybe one day you would choose to give it to another Jewish museum or not, or have it down the line to your grandchildren.
I have a
Thank you
little
for
story.
Okay, so I'm not sure of your name, Roxanne's iPad.
Lester, well, it's Lester.
Lester.
Right,
So
we're a
Lester
team.
and then Connie, and then we go on with our tour.
Okay,
So,
I can't show this picture, but it's something between my son and my cousin Michael. They discovered it, and it's still a mystery story, but it's step one. My son found a link to some archive in France, sent it to my cousin, and he wound up having a researcher go into the he paid a researcher to go to the archive, and they came up with a photograph of my grandfather's sister.
wow.
And there's more of a story to it. The archive itself is a story in itself, as I understand it. It was basically a French police or immigration archive, which was seized by the Nazis and brought back to Germany in World War II. Then the Russians, when they conquered Berlin, the Russians seized this archive and brought it back to Moscow. And in the 90s, this archive was repatriated from Russia back to France. Just a little,
Wow.
a history.
The archive on the footsteps of the history of Europe, really.
And that in itself is a story. I can't totally vouch for what I just said, but it sounds very plausible. But the archive, the photograph was taken in the early 1930s. This was before the rise of Nazis. This sister apparently got a temporary entry permit to be in France, which she overstayed. So she was basically at that point, I don't know what they labeled her in the French system, but an illegal or an undocumented alien. And they were seeking to deport her back to Poland. And he came up with a series of letters she was writing, pleading that she has no family, no one to go back to in Poland. And so far, we don't know what happened. Our best guess would be she was killed at some point in the Holocaust.
Wow.
But we don't know her story. But this was all pre-rise of Nazism. And it's just that the mystery, there's a lot of mystery, but at least we now have a photograph of the sister and a little bit of what I think is a very dramatic story, certainly behind the photograph. And now all we need is someone to translate the letters she was writing in French. We don't read or write French.
Lester, now these days, if you type the actual letters, the French letters in Google, you would have at least some of the translation. So you can try that. Thank you so much, Lester. I know we're short of time, but thank you so much for sharing this story. And I'd like Connie to have join us with her story for a couple of sentences.
Okay.
Thank you, Lester.
If can people see this? I don't know if you can.
No, but put it closer to the camera because of the background. What is it? No, we can't see. Put it next to your face. Sometimes it's better next to your face. Oh, there it is. There it is. Is it a Shabbat candle?
It's a Shabbat candle, right? Shabbat light. And, you know, if you can see the spokes on the bottom of it, it's where you could put oil. And this was it's extremely heavy, I must tell you. I don't know that this was my mother's. My mother was born in Germany in 1921 in a very small town. And the synagogue, they always said there were Jews in that town for 700 years. And there were 13 families, and the synagogue was in my great grandfather's house. So unfortunately, they fled. Germany, went to Holland. My mother was sent to the United States in 1938. My grandparents didn't make it, and she literally doesn't have anything that came from their home, but her aunt had this. We think it's from somebody in the family. We don't exactly know who, and unfortunately everybody knows.
How can it be if it's so heavy? You think your aunt really took it from Europe, or you think it's just family tradition?
No, it's definitely from Europe. There's a mark on the bottom. Yeah, it was definitely, and she had it in her home this is my great aunt. She had it for many years.
Just imagine to carry it on from Europe.
Yeah, well, there's a bracket to hang it on, but you'd have to have they had these big, heavy stucco walls to do it. I don't know if it would work in my little wood frame house, but anyway.
Amazing memory with it as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. I hope I didn't forget anyone who brought something. And with that in mind, we would go on and see in the very end of our museum tour. So, talking about different memories, that's a white shirt. Why would we put just a white shirt, not a very new one or a fancy one in our museum? The story behind it, as we just heard your stories, is a solidarity story. That's a shirt of a prisoner from the Gulag, from the Russian communist Gulag of what used to be SSSR, the Soviet Union. If you were a Jew and if you would like to learn Hebrew or have Zionistic idea or pray in Shabbat or having to do anything with Jewish beliefs or for that matter with any religious belief, doesn't matter if you're Hindu or if you're Muslim or if you're Christian, because under communist rule, you should be one with the state and the party only. And many young people in Russia wanted to learn more about Israel, to be connected to the Jewish identity, and they were sent to the Gulag, the Russian prison, very far away. And we had amazing solidarity of huge protests around the world. So in Boston, in Washington, in Times Square, in Israel, in Spain, in Madrid, in Times Square, the city square of Madrid, we had those amazing protests. And the jury of the state, the jury of the US had a major impact of it, especially in the 80s and 90s of last century. It sounds in the 20th century where we all grew up. And this shirt is one item of why should a young girl in a summer camp in Boston have signs, free, let my people go, free my brothers and sisters, hanging above her bed in a summer camp in Boston, while she doesn't even have an idea or personal connection with a young man in Sibirsk in East Russia. So that's solidarity. Some of those prisoners, Asirei Zion, Zion prisoners, were Natan Sharansky, later on the CEO of the Jewish Agency, Yuli Edelstein, up till recently, up till a few hours ago, the Health Minister of Israel, and others play very important roles in the state of Israel and in communities around the world. So solidarity, and what does it mean to different people in different times within the Jewish communities around the world. And with that in mind, we would go and take the elevator down to the first floor of the museum, to the value, to the cores of Judaism, to do we have only one way to celebrate. So you see this picture of, some people say it's pizza or ultrasound or out of space. You see down there, these black and white circles. That's time for Shabbos, time for Shabbat in different areas around the world. So you count the days, but you don't count from Sunday to Sunday. You count from Shabbat to Shabbat. So in Australia, in New York, and other places in the world, the different time zones, but the same yearly, weekly time zone of being part of the Jewish people. Behind it, we unfortunately don't have a closer look, but we have different Judaica objects of both pluralistic and traditional Judaism. And we keep a lot of attention about having voice, being the voice of different communities with different celebration of Jewish life. Such as, for instance, we have tefillin philanthropy for a girl, for a woman, for a young woman to put on their hands, such as the traditional one. And we have the cycle of the year, the Jewish year, whether it would be Rosh Hashanah for the beginning of the year, Passover in springtime, or our time, which is also almost summer after Shavuot. And with that in mind, we'll go to the bird's eye, zoom out of Beit Hatfutsot in Tel Aviv University campus, see the lovely sundown. It's almost sundown outside, and now in Israel, and see the white city of Tel Aviv, see the different horizons, the skyscrapers of Tel Aviv, hoping soon we would have the freedom to fly around freely to vacations, to visit relatives, and maybe some of you will choose to come visit Israel and come see us in the new museum. We're looking forward to see you all and have different experiences and interactive conversations and questions. We're not looking to have yes or no, black and white. We're looking for conversation. We always want to know what's your opinion, what you're making out of it. That's the new approach of ANU, the Jewish People Museum. That's why I'm so proud to be part of the education department. With that having said, I'll give it back to Connie. So go ahead, Connie, and if you have any questions, please feel free in the chat or unmute yourself. So Connie, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I hope everyone enjoyed it. It was very, very, very different from when the last time I was there, but I'm sure many of us hope that we'll be able to be there at some point in the future. The universality of a lot of the themes, even though it's from all over the world, is just, you know, so interesting, and to be able to feel the connection is very, very special. So I want to thank you, Labat, for a wonderful tour.
I just want to answer a question that I see on the chat. Is there anything on Ethiopian Jews? We actually had a gallery, a full gallery of only the story of 30 years after Moses' operation. Moses' operation was the immigration of most, not all of them unfortunately, but most of the Ethiopian Jewry who came to Israel through personal family stories, which means in the gallery you wouldn't see dates and firm facts. You would see different families and different stories in order to connect with the actual people behind the story. I don't know if that sounds clear to you, but we did have this gallery. Some of it, if you would print in YouTube, Moses Operation 30 years later, that's a full name, Moses Operation 30 years later, you would find some of the videos we shared. It's amazing. We really believe in it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And Lahitraot, Libat.
Thank you, everybody. for being
Okay,
with us
and
today.
thank you, everybody, for being on. Enjoy this beautiful day.